What's going on, guys? Today I'm doing a video on just some stuff from Facebook that I've saved. In particular, it's this photo here is gonna be kind of like the center of the video, or what it mostly revolves around. It's mostly Saturn symbolism in some of the stuff that Facebook has done in particular. Saturn symbolism is pretty pervasive in tech companies in general. But the first picture we're going to talk about is this one right here. It was at Facebook, now Meta, is changing their name. They changed their name to Meta. They're working on Meta Quest, which is like their VR application, and this was some kind of conference for it. And this picture's gone around, and the picture's kind of popular, and it's usually giving, like, people are usually criticizing it or using it to show Facebook in a bad light, because you have Zuckerberg, the only guy who's not in VR without the headset on, the only one not strapped in, while everyone else is. I have some theories about this photo, and I'll get into that. We're just going to start off right here. He's the main focus, right? This guy. And think about where this is one of my theories that I want to tell you is that I think this photo was taken on purpose the way that it is. It's almost staged. And by staged, I don't always mean people did something to make the photo turn out the way it is. Sometimes I feel like, you could call it synchronicity or serendipity, or like things like the world organically has a way of making things conspire to almost point out the perfect picture symbolically for us to look at. It's almost like saying there's no such thing as coincidence. It's kind of like that. And maybe what made the picture turn out the way it was people purposely doing that, or it could have been like forces that, and not necessarily people, if that makes sense. So my point was, just looking at this photo, where your attention is kind of drawn to is towards the guy in the center, right? He's the center of the photo, and he's got a computer out. Most other people don't have a computer out. He's in a lighter color palette, like he's dressed in a light blue rather than like most people who are in dark blue or gray or black suits around him. And I don't know who this guy is. I should have looked into that. That would be interesting to know who that man is, what his name is, what his background is. I imagine he's some kind of journalist or something, but it would be interesting to know who he is. So we're going to focus on this guy. This is a zoomed in picture, right? And there's three things that I highlighted about this guy. And one is the frown on his face, which is like a very deep frown. Like, I don't even think I can actually frown. Like, I don't think I can frown like that if I tried. It's like very hard to frown like that. It's almost like it's on purpose. And I know that's weird to say, but that's just how I feel about it. And then, you have the cube on his neck. So you have a black cube on his lanyard, which, okay, like I know what you're thinking. A lot of the stuff that you're thinking is stuff that and odds are I've already considered. I'm not trying to be condescending, but some of the stuff that the easier explanations is all stuff I've already considered most likely. So those lanyards are likely passes to be wherever they are, which still doesn't dismiss my point. That black cube is a Saturn symbol. And this is my point about everything not being in one video. You hear me say that about the black cube, and you might think that's weird or crazy, but if you watch enough videos, I promise you the amount of things I'm going to show you, if I'm not lazy and I make all the videos, I have hundreds and hundreds of videos I plan on making, and the amount of evidence I have for this stuff really is staggering. I'm not going to claim I know exactly what everything means 100%, because the occult stuff's very abstract and like just odd at times, but the fact that something's there's definitely a pattern taking place. There's definitely something there, and I hope that you can think outside the box, right, and kind of at least try to understand this stuff. And it's important. It really is important, because these guys are using symbols that, from what I can tell, have very negative associations with them, and they're sticking it on their company, and they're using it in products that you use, and it's just like, don't you want to just understand what's going on around you and not just be along for the ride and like have no understanding, no orientation with what's going on? And just, I don't know why they do this stuff. But so you got that black cube on his lanyard, and then you have the Apple logo with the bite taken out of it, right? And I'm not even trying to go Christian on you. It's just, originally, I know I'm aware a little bit of Apple's history, and originally I know that the logo goes back to Isaac Newton, which is like the apple falling on his head, and he thought of gravity. That's the story that we're told. But that one has a bite taken out of it, and it reminds you of Garden of Eden, right? Steve Wozniak is on video. This not Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple. He's on video saying that the first Apple computer was priced at $666.66. He's on video saying that. It's not me being weird. Like, and that's fine. I'm not saying you're bad if you own an Apple product. Plenty of people I care about own Apple products. There's really no way to exist in this world without participating in stuff like this. You'd be living in the woods at that. Like, if you really took into account all the products and companies and governments and everything that's using this kind of imagery, putting out, like, subscribing to this kind of spirit, you would basically be, living in the woods. And it's not just a technological thing, but it's definitely a component to it. But so you have the frown, the headset, and the black cube, and the apple with the bite taken out of it. And there's, like, I can kind of touch on each one briefly. Like the frown. Okay, so what that makes me think of is, like, a lot of the times, at least for me, especially for me, I don't know about for you guys, but a lot of the times people use technology and the internet as a form of, like, escapism, right? That kind of goes into the Matrix, and it's just kind of like a psychological, like, running away from your problems. And it's kind of like you keep doubling down on something that isn't working, that's not good for you. And it's like you're seeking solace in this thing that's not going to give it to you. And that's kind of what the frown is to me. It's like you keep engaging with this thing, but it's not actually a solution. It's not actually an answer. That's just how I feel about that. And then the cube, there's a lot of things you could think about. There's a lot of associations to the cube. One of them is like a unity aspect, which is, oddly enough, we're talking about technology and, like, Saturn symbolism. There's a video game engine called the Unity engine, and their logo is a cube. In Justice League, the movie, the Justice League movie, I can rattle like 100 of these off, and I hope you guys stick around and watch other videos to see the bigger picture, because I'm really not going to be able to show you everything in one video. It's not going to happen in a way that you can even understand. But in Justice League, the main bad guy, he's going after the mother boxes, which kind of makes you think of motherboard. There's a feminine quality to this I'm going to get into at some point. I'll probably get into it in this video a little bit. And the word matrix means womb, so there you go back to, like, this, like, feminine association. And I'm not saying women are evil. I'm just saying you have to think about, it's like the feminine quality to, like, caress and nurture, but like a twisted version of that. And that's kind of where the frown comes from. Like, that's kind of the point I was making. You're seeking, like, comfort in this thing that's not real, that's not actually giving you solutions, that's not actually comforting. It's like a delusion. It's a matrix. It's not real. And you just keep doubling down. Oh, I'm not happy. Well, let's use it some more. It's like a drug addict. Okay, so in the cube, I keep going off track. In Justice League, he's going after the cubes. I don't even know necessarily why. I haven't seen the movie, but there's this quote. He takes the cube from Wonder Woman, and he says, he's holding the black cube, and he says, "After the unity, you'll join my legion," right? So you have the unity, you have the legion. In the United Nations, there's a cube in the meditation room, and if you think about what the United Nations is, it's like it's a form of global government, right? It's something that international law that stands above individual, not nation states. And I'm not saying that's all bad, but that symbol, that thing, definitely has an association with it. But unity is not always a good thing, right? And I can, again, talk about that for hours. But so you have the consolidation. You could also think about it as, like, the flesh. Like, you're in the 3D world, like, you're in this reality. You're formed in your womb, in your mother's womb, which is the matrix. Like, in the Bible, for example, or in all religions, really, there's this rivalry or, like, dichotomy set up between the eternal and the temporal, or the spirit and the world, right? that especially I'm more familiar with the Bible than other religious books, but for the most part, they kind of try to encourage people to be less attached or less like, yeah, I guess just attached to this world. And this cube is like almost symbolic of the world. The whatever Jesus isn't, that thing is, or like that thing is. And it's like, he's what's that Bible verse? It's like, in the world you shall have tribulations, but be in good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Things like that, like it's, or Satan is the god of this world. Just, it goes on and on and on and on in the Bible. There's tons of references as far as like not being of the world. The Apple thing, I'm not too like deep into the Garden of Eden story, but the fact that they priced a computer at $666.66, and then you made your logo with an apple bitten out of it, that's just like, that's not an accident. It's weird. And like I said, there's a technological component to this. Like and I was talking about the Unity thing, the house music or the EDM artist, or dubstep, if you want to call it, Deadmau5, right? He's got a music video called Saturn, and it's a black technological cube with like matrix coding running up and down it. He performs on stage in a cube. I bet you if I looked into him more, it'd get even weirder. But I know he calls his fans the Horde, Legion. So you got, it's the same thing. It's not, you're not an individual. And where the Legion thing comes from is like, you think about Roman military. You operate as a single unit. It's like, you're not an individual. You're a collective. You're a hive mind. And the internet functions a lot like a hive mind. Go read most comment sections. People will say, "Oh, you got ratioed, man. You got ratioed." And what that means is more people are thinking like us, so that means we're right. You know what I mean? And which is not true. I'm not saying that means if a lot of people think something, that automatically means it's not true or wrong, because that's not the case either. But it's definitely not the case that if a lot of people believe something, that makes it right or true. It's not. So it's almost meaningless. Like, oh, my thing got more likes, so that means I'm right. No, it doesn't. Not even just that, but like the comments, the way people talk, the type of like even if it's like vastly different topics, like you have sports and like, I don't know, romance or something. Like the framework for how posts are made, like there's a formula that they're following. Like, with the subtitles, the same music. We all use the same music in every post. People's vernacular, how they talk. They have like their own language, and the anonymous component to it, and the impersonal component to it. You don't really see people as like real humans when you're interacting with them on the internet, unless you take a step back and like really cleanse your palate real quick, and then go back in. You can start to try and think of it as a real person behind the comment or the profile picture or whatever. But for the most part, the internet definitely functions like a hive mind, and it's one of the most off-putting things of the internet to me, because anytime I get on social media, generally I don't like. I've stopped like arguing with people and like trying to be. I even find myself almost getting caught up, like, oh, I want to reply to that. I just stop myself. I don't do that anymore, at least for the most part. But it's not a pleasant experience going on social media for me. Like, I don't like it. When Facebook announced its name change to Meta, they changed their logo from that F, which some people thought that F looked like the logo for Tubal Cain, which is Tubal Cain, Cain. And Tubal Cain is like a descendant of Cain from like the biblical story Cain and Abel. And whether or not they're real people, you need to think of it as an archetype. And like Cain is a very Cain, like if there was Cain is whatever this stuff is. He's right there and with it. He's part of the archetype. He's a dramatization or a personification of a certain spirit, of a certain mindset, ideology, belief system, value system, things like that. And it's not, if you know what to look for, it comes in different words, it comes in different faces, but it's the same thing. And if you know what to look for, you'll see people with that mentality all the time. That's a little off topic. I don't even know if I believe necessarily that Facebook's old logo was like a Tubal Cain thing. And this isn't a video on Cain necessarily. They changed their logo to this loop, right? The infinity loop. And to me, that's like, again, to me, that's like the Ouroboros. That's like If you've seen an Ouroboros, sometimes it's like that, like a figure eight, or sometimes it's just a circle. And to me, if it's a circle or like a figure eight, it's the same symbol. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. I'm not going to say I understand it completely, but there's even depictions, like illustrations of the Greek or like Roman variants of Saturn, like Kronos, where he's got the scythe. He looks like a Grim Reaper. He's an old man. Sometimes there's some illustrations of him holding the Ouroboros in one hand. And I think that's a depiction of time, which is weird because we generally think of time as a straight line, not as something that loops around. And I think there's a lot of different ways you can conceptualize that. One might be literally we're in a time loop. Like, literally, this has happened before. Literally, you keep getting recycled around after death, and you're stuck in a loop. And the goal, in theory, is to escape the loop of reincarnation. That's actually more like a curse, because I know that's a harsh way of thinking about living, because I don't really think that way. I think it's generally okay to be here. There's definitely some things like the inevitability of death and like intrinsic suffering to life that makes it definitely questionable at times. Generally, I don't look at life as a curse. If being in the spirit is much better than being recycled back here and here over and over again is like a curse. Like, if you could be in heaven or you could be here, where would you rather be? I'd probably rather be in heaven. So, again, that's like a literal interpretation of time being in a loop. And the Hindus with the yugas, the Kali Yuga, which most of them agree we're in the Kali Yuga right now. So they have a circle. It's divided into like a pie chart. Each section of the pie chart represents like an age that we're in, kind of like the Greeks. You have the Bronze Age, the Golden Age, stuff like that. It's been conceptualized by different cultures, time being in a circle, not in a straight line necessarily. And most Hindus think, at least as far as I've read, I don't know if it's true, I haven't gone around and interviewed them, think that we're in the Kali Yuga. And a yuga just means an age. And Kali, Kali, that's you know who. That's Saturn. That's a demonic looking woman. Again, I think they have it right. The Greeks have Saturn depicted as a man. I think it's a woman. I think it has, or this weird like androgynous. And I'm thinking of things like symbolically, not like literally. So again, I'm not saying that it means women are bad. You have to think more abstract like than that. It's kind of like when I've talked about like ravens and crows and vultures. It's like they have this like literary symbolic attribute to them that has some basis in reality. It's not completely detached from reality, but it's for sure a dramatization or an abstraction of those birds, and they're kind of like hit with these, and they're stuck with these like death symbols. But it's not like a crow or a raven is like an evil creature that is like a bad omen and you're gonna die if you see one or something like that. So you have to think kind of a little more metaphorically and stuff sometimes. Again, okay, back to the time loop. So I lost my train of thought. We talked about how you could be stuck in a literal time loop, or you could think of it as like history repeats itself, right? These things, people aren't necessarily that different from how long they've been around. We keep falling into patterns of thought, patterns of feelings, and patterns of behavior that generate similar outcomes. The rise and falls of civilization, prosperity, degeneracy, things like that kind of create similar outcomes for us. And think about it in your own life, how many times they have that. And guess what, they have that saying, what's insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something to be different. That means you're insane. Well, that's kind of how I think about this loop too. Is like on a personal level, it's like there's that Bible verse, right? As a dog returns to his vomit, a fool repeats his folly. And it's like, and I've done that countless times. How many times I've made the same mistake over and over again? I'm probably still going to make the same mistakes. Stuff that you shouldn't be doing, or stuff that you should be doing and you're not doing it. And it's just like, how many times are you going to repeat that behavior? There's definitely a lot of factors to it. And I think some of it comes down to some people outright revel in what's bad for them and like love it and don't feel a sense of like, I just sinned, or I just did something wrong. Sinned by your own credentials, by your own judgment. I'm not even saying like the Bible or something. I'm just saying like You have an idea of what you should, an ideal of what you should be or want to be, and you just went against that. That's a sin. So it's like, and you could have just made it up yourself. It's not even me telling you. It's just you made it up. And it's kind of like doing that over and over again, and it's insane. And there's some people who revel in what I call death. In which is what Saturn is. And I'm gonna do a video series called Death Culture, where I really like highlight in music, in speech, and like things that people say and do that really like seems like we live in a death culture. And the ultimate goal for this, for me, and for this YouTube channel is to get out of that as much as humanly possible. Do what's gonna put you on track towards your goal. Do things that are healthy for you and your body and your mind and your spirit, and like it too, and to like it, to be disciplined, to be family and friend oriented, to value those things, all that stuff that you could conceptualize as heroic, right? So you want to be more like a hero and less like a villain, which is what this stuff kind of is. But it's an insane, it's an insane loop. Again, that's just my idea. That's like what I think about when I. It goes back to that guy with the frown on his face, right? He keeps doing it, but it's not working, and it's like an insane thing to keep engaging with it over and over and over again. And I spent so long talking about the loop. When Facebook announced its name change, they used this picture, right? And guess what's front and center right there? It's Saturn, which isn't an accident. So this is one of the first things that they put out there when they had that name change. So this was like a news article when Facebook changed its name. It was going around. This is a CNN article, and it was Hebrew speakers mock Facebook's corporate rebrand to Meta. And why are Hebrew speakers mocking it? Well, let's find out. Social media users in Israel are mocking Facebook's company's name change to Meta, as it sounds similar to the Hebrew word for dead. Many Twitter users scoffed at the social media company's rebrand revealed by founder Mark Zuckerberg earlier this week. Using the hashtag #FacebookDead, some people do not know their branding research. So sorry, some of that text is very blurry. It's hard to read. Whether or not, I think the Hebrew word for dead is met, like MET, just met, drop the A. But like, you need to understand, man, you really do, that that's not an accident, okay? That Hebrew word is even close. What they changed their name to, that's even close to the word for dead. And then they have the Saturn thing, the Saturn picture. They have that loop as their logo. It's just like, these things aren't an accident. They're 100% doing this. And they're 100% using this type of imagery on purpose. Yeah, this is just the loop Ouroboros infinity thing that I've already talked about. This is something that I've kind of already touched on, as far as like the internet being a hive mind, and like you can see that in the way people talk. We lip people, the format in which content is put out, even if it's like at its base like a different topic. Like they'll lip sync certain audio over and over and over again, certain music over and over again, certain jokes, like that's kind of what a meme is. It's like a joke told over and over again, and that's fine. Like, memes can be funny, especially if you take a break from it and like come back to it. They're kind of funny. But if you're just constantly taking that stuff in, it gets rather annoying. This Facebook ad kind of speaks to that hive mind nature. And again, this is like one, there's a lot of symbols that kind of tie into the Saturn thing, and one of them is insects, particularly probably ants and bees, I would say, but insects in general. It's kind of like when I say agriculture. That's why, like, I'll say like Saturn, agriculture is a Saturn symbol, but then it has an umbrella of agriculture. But then you could go to corn, wheat, things like, or grain and things like that. Agriculture, they're all kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing with insects, but I would say ants and bees, and it's because they have that Borg hive mind quality to them. And this was an ad for Facebook groups, right? Whoops. This was an ad for Facebook groups. Worship the Queen together, and It's an ant. We all pretend to be ants in an ant colony Facebook groups. So it's an ad for groups, which is a group's more than one. It's a collective, obviously, and they're pretending to be ants in an ant colony worshiping a queen. And that's also another component to the insect thing. It's a matriarchy, right? It's headed by a queen or a woman, and all the drones go out and gather and whatnot for her. And I think the Saturn matrix idea or concept is feminine in nature, or at least it's like a man. It's like androgynous, or like a man pretending to be a woman. I'm not gonna get too into that. It's like its own separate video, but one way I think about it is like a solar eclipse, right? Which the black sun, among other things, is Saturn. So it's another symbol for the same thing. The moon is feminine symbolically. The sun's masculine symbolically. The moon in a solar eclipse, like the actual literal cosmological phenomenon that is a solar eclipse, is the moon blocking out the sun, right? And if the moon is feminine, the sun is masculine. You have the moon in front of the sun. So I interpret that as either the feminine like overtaking the masculine, or the masculine wearing a feminine cover, right? And you can take that however you want to take it. I know people are joking. I actually investigated this a little bit. It's like something people were doing for fun, and it's like a joke. But the fact that this wasn't even an ad, or it really even got to something like this, like, hey, let's all pretend to be like a hive mind and be like drones in an ant colony. And it's like, that's kind of like what the internet already is to me, largely, even if people weren't like consciously participating in a joke. It's just odd. It makes sense that something like that would happen, especially given all the other Saturn stuff associated with it. Speaking of memes, right? I think that word originally came up from, I think people say Richard Dawkins, I think it's Richard Dawkins, like coined the term. And it's like a meme in his mind was like a cultural imprint. It was like an archetype almost. It's like this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this archetypal imprint in our psyche. And it's kind of like when you understand things without even being consciously aware that you know it. It's kind of like an intuitive thing, and it's along like cultural lines in this case. And I mean, I'm probably, not the best guy to explain this, but the meme in that context and the meme on the internet with like jokes, they actually kind of overlap in some ways. And I don't even know who started using meme as a term for like internet jokes, but they have like a format, they have a formula, and they speak to like a group or like a belief, and they kind of like play on those things and make jokes about it. I thought it was funny that this is a meme that somebody created, and I don't even think whoever made this thinks that Facebook is using all this Saturn imagery or notices it. I think that it's just like one of those things that just happens. And that's kind of what I was speaking on. It's like this thing that people kind of understand on some level without even really understanding it. And the meme is generic tech company art style of a woman devouring her son. And if you know that famous Saturn painting, this is just like that, except it's like an old man eating a person, sometimes kids. In this case, it's a woman, which I actually think is, like I've been saying, like, which I think is actually more accurate. And someone just made that. And they're making fun of like the stupid, I guess you could say, uninspired art style that like tech companies will use. And it's funny, generic tech company, specifically tech art style of a woman devouring her own son, and it looks exactly like the Kronos painting. So corporate art style, this is like just a website that kind of talks about the meme. And again, this is the same thing. This meme's incredibly old. This meme is before Facebook was even Meta. It was just Facebook. I remember seeing it years back. And again, it's the same thing. The original picture is Mark Zuckerberg eating like a burrito or something, and in this case, it's literally a cropped image from that Kronos painting I was talking about, which is Saturn. Maybe they have some like occult understanding, like the original creator. We don't know who made it. We don't know who made that meme. Maybe they do have some occult understanding, and if they do, that's fine. It doesn't even really discredit the point anyways. The fact that it gets shared by people, no way that everyone shares that image, and everyone thinks that everyone that thinks that image is like funny and wants to share it and like somehow understands it, they don't all have like an occult understanding of whatever this Saturn stuff is. And I'm not even saying that in a condescending way. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I'm trying to tell people the fact that they even gravitate towards that on any level, even if the artists themselves knew about it, just the fact that the audience is like thinking that's funny or like sharing it or liking it or commenting on it and stuff. And I'd probably argue even the artists themselves probably didn't know. And it's just weird. And that was the kind of the point I was making about the photo earlier of the VR conference and like forces conspiring to like show you things. It's not necessarily a conspiracy in the traditional sense of like normal of like people smoking cigars in a back room putting together a plan. And that is a thing that happens. People do plan stuff, but there is this like I want to say supernatural element to it. That's how I'll describe it, honestly. So this is the last thing that I'm going to talk about. This video's run on longer than I wanted it to. So we got a Facebook ad. This is something I saw. It's a Meta ad. I keep calling it Facebook. I don't know if anyone actually calls them Meta. I feel like I still call them Facebook all the time. So it's just an ad for Meta, maybe Meta Quest. But it says, when that day comes, we'll all go much further. Everybody will. When we connect, this is the key part. When we connect beyond boundaries, we all go farther. Meta. And again, I understand it's a social media website or service. It's meant to connect people. It's about communication and talking. So it makes sense that they're using this kind of language outside of an occult perspective. We'll all go further together and connect beyond boundaries. But the thing you need to understand is when you pair that kind of like saying with all the other Saturn stuff they've done, to me, that's 100% not an accident that they're using language like that. I had this one picture, right, of like it's like a Saturn light, like neon light hanging up, and it was at some restaurant, and beneath it said "No borders, no wall, sanctuary for all," right? And I'm not saying the person who hung that sign knew anything, but it's just like and this was probably around like 2016 when there's a lot of people arguing about that stuff. Think about beyond boundaries, right? That's what I've been saying is a component to this Saturn thing is consolidation, the dissolving of boundaries, the dissolving of distinctions between one thing and another. And a lot of people think that nowadays, and you have that with gender, you have that with nations. Like, you know, how can you say immigration shouldn't, like, we shouldn't, like, a lot of people advocate for just unregulated immigration, things like that. You have it with gender, no difference. I've literally have a clip of I think it was a 6th grade teacher telling kids that there's a line between boy and girl, and she says, in time, that's funny. I hope to dissolve that line completely, something along those lines. I'll find the clip if you guys really want to see it. Or if I feel like it's not even, I'm not even trying to make it about however like political stuff. I'm just trying to explain to you what this is conceptually. They want to dissolve the boundary between boy and girl, nation and nation, right and wrong. That's another one. How many people nowadays think that right and wrong exists? Probably not many. At least they'll say that, but then they have their own set of values. They obviously believe certain things are wrong. If you probe even, one layer deep, they don't actually believe that don't judge, right and wrong don't exist. They don't believe that. They have their own sets of judgments. But this whole beyond boundaries thing, boundaries are a good thing. We were talking about the legion, the hive mind, like the separation between me and you. I'm an individual. A lot of people are group or the gay community, the black community, the this community, the that community. They're collective minded. Which it sounds virtuous on paper, but it's not. At least for the most part, in my opinion. Again, it's the erasure of distinctions, right? So the separation of you from another person. One interesting piece of media that shows this. I know it's like off topic, and I will make a video on this, but it's called Neon Genesis Evangelion. And it's an anime show, and it's all leading up to this event, right? Where there's these first of all, something exists in every person. It's called an AT field. An AT field it's made up, but it's in the show. It's the thing that separates people from one another. Like It's what makes me me and you, and not like a single life form. And the whole show leads up to this event called the Third Impact. Third Impact, which is three, which is Binna. And guess who triggers that third impact? It's the main character's mom, or a clone of his mom, if you want to be more precise. But it's just, there's a lot of stuff that, again, I'll save it for that video. But the point is, the Third Impact, you just YouTube it. It's one of the most horrifying pieces of fiction I've ever seen. It's not a good thing when all of humanity gets broken down from their separate forms into one form. It's horrifying. It's not good. You know, the motivations behind doing that are, you know, obvious, and I'm not lost on the motivations for why people would be incentivized to do something like that, but it still doesn't make it good. Anyways, I just thought that was interesting that they use that kind of language. You know, when we connect beyond boundaries, we all go farther. You know, that type of thinking as well is super riddled in like for example, a big one is Kofi Annan or whatever, KOFIANNAN or something, ON, I don't know. Head of the UN at one point. He's this African dude, and he said arguing against the law, or he's like arguing against globalization is like arguing against the laws of gravity. And globalization is like, again, the consolidation of everything into one system. So one government, one money, one police, things like that for the whole world. He's saying with that statement is that it's inevitable. It's a part of our evolution, which is something that's touched on in that Neon Genesis Evangelion show I was just talking about. All these things appear in real life and in fiction. They view it as an inevitable step in human evolution, and that's kind of what that whole "we all go further" thing hits me as. I guess I understand that like things can get done more efficiently when there's not like dissenting opinions and like variety of opinions and inputs, but like that's also where the innovation happens, is with like individuals who think outside the system that they exist in, or the group that they exist in. That's how like real change really happens. It's not gonna, all those heavily consolidated systems know how to do is perpetuate themselves. It seems like it doesn't seem like they really know how to innovate. So I kind of disagree with that whole, you know, if everything was of one mind, we would be much better off. I don't think that's the case, at least not in the super long term. That's all I have to say. Hope some of that made sense. You know, back on that real quick, just the idea of this photo being like staged. Just, if this is like an off-topic thing a little bit, but don't you think it's odd that that guy's the center of attention for the photo? He's the one with the laptop out. It's angled so you can see the logo at the camera. He's got his lanyard showing. He's dressed in a lighter color from everyone else. I think it's just super odd that this image turned out the way it did. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching.